The autumn sun was setting over Manhattan as 12-year-old Marcus Thompson walked through the busy streets of New York City. His worn-out backpack hung heavily on his small shoulders, filled with textbooks and his work apron from his uncle's convenience store. The young boy's dark brown eyes watched the passing yellow cabs and busy people rushing home from work, a daily scene he had grown used to over the years. Marcus lived in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Harlem with his mother, Sarah Thompson. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, often taking double shifts to make sure they had enough money for rent and food. Even though they didn't have much, Sarah had raised Marcus with strong values that made him stand out among his peers. That Thursday afternoon had started like any other day. Marcus woke up at 6:30 a.m. to the smell of his mother making breakfast before her morning shift. She had made his favorite, scrambled eggs and toast, and left a small note on the refrigerator reminding him to do his homework before going to help at his uncle's store. These little notes were their special way of staying connected during her long working hours. At school, Marcus sat through his classes at Washington Middle School, where he was known as a quiet but smart student. His favorite teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had praised him during math class for solving a difficult problem. This small victory had put him in a good mood that lasted throughout the day. During lunch, he shared his mother's homemade sandwich with his best friend Kevin, who had forgotten his lunch money again. After school, instead of playing basketball with his friends like many other 12-year-olds, Marcus headed to his Uncle James's convenience store on 125th Street. The store wasn't very big, but it was always busy with regular customers who had known Marcus since he was a little boy. Uncle James wasn't his real uncle. He was his mother's best friend's husband, but he had always treated Marcus like family. For 2 hours, Marcus helped stock shelves, organize inventory, and occasionally work the cash register under his uncle's supervision. Uncle James insisted on paying him a small allowance, even though Marcus had offered to help for free. Hard work deserves fair pay, Uncle James always said, teaching Marcus another valuable lesson about life. As the day was coming to an end, Uncle James noticed Marcus looking tired. "Hey, champ," he said, putting a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Why don't you head home early today? You've done enough, and your mom will be waiting." Marcus smiled gratefully, collected his things, and gave his uncle a quick hug before leaving the store. Usually, Marcus took the direct route home, but today something made him want to walk through Central Park. Maybe it was the beautiful orange and red leaves falling from the trees, or maybe it was just because he wanted to enjoy the peaceful evening before heading back to their noisy neighborhood. His mother always warned him about walking through the park alone, but the sun hadn't completely set yet, and there were still plenty of people around. As he walked along the park's winding paths, Marcus watched couples holding hands, children playing with their dogs, and street musicians playing their instruments for small crowds. He thought about how his mother would be home late again tonight, working an extra shift to save money for his upcoming school field trip to Washington, D.C. Even though he told her he didn't need to go, she insisted that he shouldn't miss out on important experiences just because money was tight. The young boy adjusted his backpack and checked his watch. It was 5:45 p.m. The streetlights were starting to come on, casting long shadows across the park paths. Marcus decided it was time to head home, where he would make himself dinner with the leftovers his mother had prepared, finish his homework, and maybe watch some TV before going to bed. Little did Marcus know that in the next few minutes, his ordinary day would become extraordinary, and his life would change forever. As he walked past a fancy park bench near the boating lake, something caught his eye, something that would test everything his mother had taught him about honesty and doing the right thing. Marcus stopped walking when he saw something sparkling in the grass near the park bench. At first, he thought it might be a piece of glass catching the last rays of sunlight, but there was something different about this sparkle. It seemed to throw off tiny rainbows in every direction, like nothing he had ever seen before. Looking around to make sure no one was watching, he walked closer to investigate. His heart started beating faster as he bent down to get a better look. There, partially hidden in the newly cut grass, lay a massive diamond ring. The stone was bigger than any he had seen in the jewelry store windows on Fifth Avenue, and the platinum band gleamed even in the fading light. With shaking hands, Marcus picked up the ring. It felt heavy and cold in his palm. The diamond wasn't just big, it was perfect, catching every bit of light and breaking it into thousands of tiny sparkles. The band had tiny diamonds all around it too, and when he looked closely, he could see some writing engraved inside, though it was too dark now to read it clearly. A couple walked past, making Marcus quickly slip the ring into his jacket pocket. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone in the park could hear it. He had seen enough movies and TV shows to know that this ring must be worth more money than he could even imagine. Maybe even more than his mother made in a whole year at the hospital. As he started walking home again, his legs felt wobbly. The ring in his pocket seemed to weigh 100 pounds, even though it was lighter than his house keys. Every person he passed made him nervous. Did they know what he had found? Were they looking for it? Should he have left it there? But leaving such a valuable thing on the ground didn't seem right either. Someone could steal it. The usual 20-minute walk home felt like it took hours. Marcus kept putting his hand in his pocket to make sure the ring was still there. Each time he touched it, a mix of excitement and worry rushed through his body. He thought about his mother, working so hard to pay their bills. He thought about how their TV was old and sometimes didn't work, and how he needed new sneakers because his old ones had holes. When Marcus finally reached his apartment building, he ran up the 4 flights of stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. Once inside their apartment, he locked the door and quickly went to his small bedroom. The apartment was empty. His mother wouldn't be home from her shift until late that night. Under the bright light of his desk lamp, Marcus finally got a good look at the ring. It was even more beautiful than he had realized in the park. The main diamond was cut in a way that made it look like it had a star inside it. The platinum band was covered in smaller diamonds that formed a delicate pattern. Now he could read the engraving inside. To Victoria, my North Star, forever yours. Marcus turned on his old laptop and started searching for information about diamond rings. His eyes grew wider and wider as he read about how much large diamonds could cost. Some rings were worth millions of dollars. Millions. That was more money than Marcus had ever dreamed about. He found a small wooden box where he kept his special things: a baseball signed by his favorite Yankees player, a photo of his father who had passed away when Marcus was just a baby, and his last report card with all A's that had made his mother cry happy tears. He carefully placed the ring in this box and hid it in his sock drawer. That evening, when his mother came home tired from her long shift, she found Marcus sitting quietly at the kitchen table, barely touching his dinner. She asked him if everything was okay, and he just nodded, not trusting himself to speak. How could he tell her what he had found? What would she say he should do? As Marcus lay in bed that night, the ring hidden just a few feet away, he couldn't stop thinking about all the things that money could buy: a better apartment, a new TV, no more extra ships for his mom. But he also couldn't stop thinking about something his mother always said: your character is built by the choices you make when nobody's watching. Sleep didn't come easily that night, as Marcus faced the biggest decision of his young life. That night turned out to be the longest night of Marcus's young life. He tossed and turned in his bed, his thoughts racing like cars on a highway. Every few minutes, he would get up to check his sock drawer, making sure the ring was still there. Each time he looked at it, the diamond seemed to whisper different things to him. Around midnight, Marcus heard his mother come home from her late shift. Through the thin walls of their apartment, he could hear her tired footsteps as she walked to the kitchen. The familiar sound of her heating up leftover soup in the microwave made his stomach twist with guilt. She worked so hard, yet they still struggled to make ends meet. Marcus thought about last week when his mother had to say no to buying him the new science calculator his teacher recommended. Next month, she had promised with a sad smile, after I pay the electric bill. He remembered how she had been wearing the same worn-out nursing shoes for 2 years, always saying they were still good enough. The ring in his drawer could change all of that. Unable to sleep, Marcus got out of bed and sat at his small desk. He turned on his phone's flashlight and began making a list of pros and cons, something his teacher Miss Rodriguez had taught him to do when facing difficult decisions. On the keep the ring side, he wrote, Mom wouldn't have to work double shifts anymore. We could move to a better apartment. Could pay for college in the future. New clothes and shoes for both of us. No more worrying about bills. On the return the ring side, he wrote just one thing: it's the right thing to do. Marcus stared at his list for a long time. The keep the ring side had more points, but somehow that single line on the other side felt heavier than all the others combined. He thought about his father, who had died when Marcus was just a baby. His mother often told him how his father had been the most honest man she'd ever known. He didn't have much money, she would say, but people trusted him with their lives. Marcus wondered what his father would do in this situation. Around 2 a.m., Marcus heard his mother coughing in her room. He knew she was getting sick, but couldn't afford to take time off work. The ring seemed to grow heavier in his mind. With that kind of money, she could rest, see doctors, maybe even take a vacation, something she hadn't done in years. But then other thoughts crept in. What if someone saw him pick up the ring in the park? What if the police found out? He imagined his mother's face if she learned he had kept something that didn't belong to him. The disappointment in her eyes would be worse than any punishment. Marcus remembered a story his mother had told him about when she was young. She had found a wallet with $300 in it, more money than she had ever seen at that time. She returned it to its owner, an old man who cried with joy because the money was for his wife's medicine. That moment taught me, she had said, that doing the right thing isn't about what you gain or lose, it's about who you are. As the night grew deeper, Marcus opened his window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, someone was probably very worried about losing this ring. Maybe it was a family heirloom, or maybe it meant something special to them, just like his father's photo meant everything to him. The sun was starting to rise when Marcus finally made his decision. He hadn't slept at all, but his mind felt clearer than ever. He knew what he had to do, even though it wasn't going to be easy. Walking quietly to his sock drawer, Marcus took out the wooden box and opened it. The ring sparkled in the early morning light, beautiful and tempting. But now, instead of seeing all the things it could buy, Marcus saw it for what it really was, a test of his character, a chance to make his parents proud, even if one of them was no longer here to see it. He carefully wrapped the ring in a clean handkerchief and put it in his school backpack. Today, instead of going to school, he would take it to the police station. His mother had always said that character was built in moments when nobody was watching. This was his moment. The morning sun was barely up when Marcus left his apartment. He had left a note for his mother saying he had to go to school early for a special project. It wasn't exactly true, but he didn't want her to worry. The ring sat heavily in his backpack as he walked down the quiet streets toward the police station. The 28th Precinct Police Station was a big gray building that had always looked scary to Marcus. He had passed it many times but had never gone inside. Now, standing at the bottom of its stone steps, it looked even more intimidating. A few police officers walked in and out, some carrying coffee cups, others talking on their phones. Marcus took a deep breath and climbed the steps. His legs felt like they were made of jelly, but he kept walking. Inside, the station was busy even this early in the morning. The front desk was staffed by a tall police officer with gray hair and kind eyes. His nameplate read, Officer Miller. "Can I help you, young man?" Officer Miller asked, looking up from his computer. Marcus's voice came out as a whisper at first. He cleared his throat and tried again. I found something in Central Park yesterday." His hands shook as he carefully took out the handkerchief from his backpack. Officer Miller leaned forward, curious. Marcus unwrapped the handkerchief, revealing the spectacular diamond ring. The fluorescent lights of the police station made it sparkle even more than before. Officer Miller's eyes grew wide, and he quickly called over another officer. "Where exactly did you find this?" Officer Miller asked, now giving Marcus his full attention. His voice was gentle but serious. Marcus described the exact spot in Central Park, the time he found it, and everything he could remember about that moment. As he spoke, more officers gathered around the desk, all looking at the ring with amazement. "Do you have any idea how much this ring is worth, son?" asked a female officer named Rodriguez. When Marcus shook his head, she continued, "This ring could be worth millions of dollars. And you brought it here?" Marcus thought about the long night he'd spent thinking about that very question. "My mom always says doing the right thing isn't about money," he said quietly. "It's about who you want to be." The officers exchanged impressed looks. Officer Miller picked up his phone and made a quick call. "You're not going to believe this," he said into the phone, "but that ring Mrs. Chen reported missing. A young man just brought it in." The next hour was a blur of activity. Marcus had to fill out some forms, with Officer Miller helping him with the bigger words. They took pictures of the ring and wrote down his story. He learned that the ring belonged to Victoria Chen, one of the richest people in New York City. She had lost it while walking through Central Park after a business meeting. "Mrs. Chen has been frantic about this ring," Officer Rodriguez told Marcus. "She's offered a large reward for its return. She says it was her grandmother's ring, brought all the way from China." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had made the right choice. Knowing the ring was a family treasure made him even more certain. He thought about his father's photo in his wooden box at home and how sad he would be if he ever lost it. As the officers finished their paperwork, Marcus looked at the clock and realized he was very late for school. Officer Miller noticed his worry and smiled. "Don't worry about that. We'll call your school and explain everything. And we'll need to contact your mother too." Marcus's stomach did a flip. "My mom, she doesn't know I'm here. She's probably worried sick." "She won't be worried for long," Officer Miller said kindly. "In fact, I think she's going to be very proud of you." Just then, the station's doors burst open, and a well-dressed woman rushed in, followed by several people in business suits. She stopped short when she saw the ring on the desk. Marcus watched as tears filled her eyes. Victoria Chen, one of New York's most powerful businesswomen, had arrived to reclaim her grandmother's ring, and Marcus's life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. Within hours of Marcus returning the ring, his simple act of honesty turned into something much bigger than he could have imagined. The story spread like wildfire across New York City, starting when a reporter who happened to be at the police station overheard the conversation about a young boy returning a $1 million ring. By lunchtime, 3 different news vans were parked outside Marcus's apartment building. His mother, Sarah, who had rushed home from the hospital after getting the police station's call, could hardly believe her eyes. Reporters in professional suits stood with microphones and cameras, all waiting to talk to her 12-year-old son. Marcus Thompson, the honest boy from Harlem, became the headline that flashed across local news channels. People loved the story. A black boy from a working-class neighborhood finding a $2.4 million diamond ring and choosing to return it, despite his family's financial struggles. It was the kind of news that made people smile and believe in humanity again. Marcus sat on their worn living room couch, watching in amazement as his face appeared on their old TV screen. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. The news showed clips from the police station's security cameras. Marcus walking in nervously, taking out the ring, and talking to the officers. "Mom, why is everyone making such a big deal about this?" Marcus asked, uncomfortable with all the attention. "I just did what you always taught me to do." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "Because, baby, in a world where people often choose what's easy over what's right, you chose to do the right thing. That's something special." Their phone wouldn't stop ringing. Marcus's teachers called to praise him. His Uncle James called to say the convenience store was packed with reporters asking questions about his nephew. Even their neighbors, who had never paid much attention to them before, kept knocking on their door to congratulate them. Social media had exploded with the story. Someone had posted a video of Marcus leaving the police station, and it had already been viewed millions of times. People left thousands of comments. "This young man gives me hope for the future. His mother raised him right. We need more kids like Marcus in this world." The attention wasn't all easy to handle. Some reporters asked very personal questions about their life, their financial situation, and Marcus's father. A few people even suggested that Marcus should have kept the ring, calling him foolish for giving up such a fortune. But for every negative comment, there were hundreds of positive ones. People from all over the world were touched by Marcus's honesty. Children's books authors wanted to write about him. Schools asked if he would come speak to their students about integrity. By evening, the story had reached national news. Major networks wanted interviews, and talk show hosts were calling to invite Marcus and his mother to appear on their shows. It was overwhelming for a boy who usually spent his evenings doing homework and helping at his uncle's store. Sarah had to take the day off work to handle all the attention, something she had never done before. She helped Marcus understand that while the attention might be uncomfortable, his story was inspiring people and making a difference. "Your father would be so proud," she told him as they sat eating dinner, trying to ignore the occasional camera flash through their windows. He always said that a person's true character shows in the choices they make when times are hard. Marcus nodded, thinking about how different this day could have been if he had made another choice. The ring might have solved their money problems, but it would have changed who he was. Looking at his mother's proud face, he knew he wouldn't trade this feeling for all the diamonds in the world. Later that night, as things finally started to quiet down, Marcus got a special phone call. Victoria Chen herself wanted to meet him personally the next day. She had been touched not just by his honesty, but by the humble way he handled all the attention. As Marcus lay in bed that night, his mind raced with thoughts about meeting one of the richest people in New York. But mostly he felt grateful. grateful that he had made the right choice, grateful for his mother's teachings, and grateful that somehow his simple decision to be honest had touched so many people's hearts. Little did Marcus know, the next day would bring even more surprising changes to his life. The next morning, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up in front of Marcus's apartment building. A friendly driver in a neat uniform stepped out and introduced himself as Thomas. He had come to take Marcus and his mother to meet Victoria Chen at the Global Tech Industries headquarters in Manhattan. Marcus had never been in such a fancy car before. The seats were made of soft leather, and there was even a small refrigerator filled with drinks. His mother Sarah sat beside him, wearing her best dress, the one she usually saved for church. They held hands as they drove through the city, both nervous about meeting someone so important. The Global Tech building was the tallest Marcus had ever seen up close. It seemed to touch the clouds, its glass windows shining in the morning sun. In the lobby, the floors were so shiny that Marcus could see his reflection in them. A security guard gave them special visitor badges, and they took an elevator that moved so smoothly and quickly, Marcus's ears popped. Floor 86, Executive Offices, a pleasant voice announced as the elevator doors opened. They stepped into a beautiful office area with views of the entire city. Marcus could see Central Park from up here, looking like a giant green rectangle far below. Victoria Chen's assistant, a kind woman named Janet, led them to a large office. The moment they walked in, Marcus was surprised to see Victoria Chen wasn't sitting behind a big desk as he had imagined. Instead, she was standing by the window, looking at a framed photograph. When she turned around, her eyes were slightly red, as if she had been crying. "Marcus," she said warmly, walking over to greet them. "And Mrs. Thompson. Thank you both so much for coming." She wasn't what Marcus had expected. Instead of looking scary or powerful, she seemed kind, wearing a simple blue dress and a gentle smile. Victoria led them to a comfortable seating area and asked if they wanted anything to drink. As they settled in with their sodas, Marcus, and coffee, the adults, Victoria carefully took out the diamond ring that had brought them together. "This ring," she said softly, "belonged to my grandmother. She was the strongest person I've ever known." Victoria's voice became emotional as she continued. She grew up very poor in rural China. She used to walk 4 miles to school every day because she believed education was the key to a better life. When she finally saved enough money to come to America, she sold everything she owned, except this ring. Marcus and his mother listened intently as Victoria shared her story. She told them how her grandmother had worked 3 jobs to put her through college, how she had started Global Tech Industries from a tiny apartment, and how her grandmother's ring had always reminded her to stay humble and work hard. "When I lost this ring," Victoria said, wiping a tear from her eye, "I felt like I had lost my last connection to her. But then you found it, Marcus. And what amazes me most isn't just that you returned it. It's how you did it without expecting anything in return." She turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Thompson, you've raised an extraordinary young man. In a world where many people choose greed over goodness, your son chose character over fortune. That's remarkable." Marcus noticed his mother crying quietly beside him. Victoria reached for a beautiful wooden box on the table and opened it. Inside was a framed photo of an elderly Chinese woman wearing the same ring. "This is my grandmother," Victoria said, handing the photo to Marcus. "She passed away last year. She always said that true wealth isn't about money. It's about what you give to others. Marcus, you've given me back something priceless, and now I want to do something for you." Victoria stood up and walked to her desk, returning with some papers. "I've been thinking about what my grandmother would want me to do. She believed in education and helping others. So, I've made some decisions that I hope will honor both her memory and your honesty." Marcus and his mother leaned forward, not knowing that their lives were about to change forever through the generosity of a woman who saw in Marcus the same values her grandmother had taught her decades ago. Victoria Chen sat back down with the papers in her hands, her eyes bright with purpose. Marcus and his mother watched curiously as she laid out 3 different envelopes on the glass coffee table between them. "I believe that when we receive blessings in life, we should share them with others," Victoria began, picking up the first envelope. "Marcus, your honesty has touched my heart, and I want to make sure your future is as bright as your character." Opening the first envelope, she pulled out official-looking documents. "This is a full scholarship fund in your name, Marcus. It'll cover all your education costs from now through college. Any college you choose to attend. Your mother won't have to worry about saving for your education anymore." Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Marcus sat very still, trying to understand what he was hearing. Victoria continued, picking up the second envelope. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand you're a nurse working double shifts to support your family." Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. "I've spoken with the board of directors at Global Tech Medical Division. We would like to offer you a position as head nurse coordinator with double your current salary and regular working hours. No more night shifts unless you choose to take them." Sarah began crying openly now, holding Marcus's hand tightly, but Victoria wasn't finished. She picked up the third envelope, the thickest one. "This final part isn't just about your family," she explained. "Marcus's story has inspired me to create something bigger. I'm establishing the Thompson Integrity Scholarship Program for underprivileged youth. Every year, we'll select 50 students who show exceptional character and provide them with educational opportunities." Victoria handed the third envelope to Marcus. "You'll be on the junior advisory board, helping to choose future recipients. Your story will help other young people understand that character matters more than money." But there was more. Victoria pressed a button on her desk, and Janet came in pushing a cart with a large covered object on it. Victoria stood and pulled off the cover, revealing a brand new computer setup, a laptop, printer, and all the accessories Marcus would need for school. "These are tools for your future," Victoria smiled. "And there's one more thing." She handed Sarah a set of keys. "There's an apartment in a safer neighborhood, closer to your new workplace. 3 bedrooms, so Marcus can have a proper study room. The rent is covered for the first year, giving you time to settle into your new position." Marcus and his mother sat stunned, overwhelmed by such generosity. Sarah found her voice first. "Miss Chen, this is too much. We can't possibly." Victoria held up her hand. "Please," she said softly. "My grandmother used to say that money is like water. It only has value when it flows and helps things grow. Marcus's honesty reminded me of what truly matters in life. This isn't charity. It's an investment in character." She turned to Marcus, who had been quietly taking everything in. "Do you know why I'm doing all this, Marcus?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Because of the ring?" Victoria shook her head. "No, because of who you are. You showed integrity when no one was watching. You chose what was right over what was easy. Those qualities are rare and precious, just like that ring. They deserve to be rewarded." Standing up, Victoria walked to her desk and returned with one final item, a small box. Inside was a simple but elegant watch. "This was my grandmother's last gift to me before she passed away. The inscription says, 'Time reveals character.' I want you to have it, Marcus. Let it remind you that every moment is a chance to make the right choice." As Marcus carefully took the watch, tears finally fell from his eyes too. This morning, he had walked into this building as a 12-year-old boy who had done the right thing. Now he was walking out as someone who could help change other people's lives. Before they left, Victoria had one last thing to say. "Tomorrow, we'll hold a press conference to announce the scholarship program. But tonight, go home and celebrate. Your life is changing, but remember, it's changing because of who you already are." As Marcus and his mother rode the elevator down, both still in shock, he looked at his reflection in the shiny doors. He was still the same person, but now he had the power to help others make the right choices too. Sometimes, he realized, doing the right thing didn't just change your life, it could change many lives. 3 years had passed since that life-changing day when Marcus found the ring in Central Park. Now 15, he sat in the auditorium of his new school, watching as 50 students received their Thompson Integrity Scholarships. Each of them had their own story of honesty and character, and Marcus had helped choose every one of them. The school auditorium was packed with proud parents, teachers, and news cameras. Victoria Chen stood at the podium, looking exactly as Marcus remembered her from that first meeting. She was telling the audience how a 12-year-old boy's honest decision had started a movement that was changing lives across New York City. In just 3 years, Victoria announced, the Thompson Integrity Scholarship Program has helped 150 students access better education. But more importantly, it has shown our community that character and integrity matter more than anything else. Marcus smiled, thinking about how much had changed. His mother, Sarah, no longer worked exhausting double shifts. As the head nurse coordinator at Global Tech Medical, she now helped train other nurses and even had time to volunteer at community health programs. Their new apartment was bright and spacious, with a small study room where Marcus could work on his scholarship program duties. The watch Victoria had given him still sat on his wrist, its inscription, "Time reveals character," reminding him daily of the choice he had made. He had worn it while speaking at dozens of schools across the city, sharing his story with thousands of students. Some of them would come up to him afterward, telling him about valuable things they had found and returned, inspired by his example. His Uncle James had turned his convenience store into a community gathering spot. On one wall, he had created what he called the Wall of Integrity, where he posted stories about local kids doing the right thing. The wall was now completely covered with newspaper clippings and handwritten tales of honesty. After the ceremony, a small boy approached Marcus. He looked about 12, the same age Marcus had been when he found the ring. The boy held up a newspaper clipping showing himself returning a lost wallet he had found. "I did it because I heard your story," the boy said shyly. "My mom said we could have used the money, but I remembered what you said about character being more valuable than cash." Marcus knelt down to the boy's level. "You made the right choice," he said, remembering how difficult his own decision had been. "And that choice will always be part of who you are." Later that evening, Marcus attended a special dinner with Victoria Chen and the scholarship recipients. The restaurant was fancy, with white tablecloths and sparkling glasses, but Victoria made sure everyone felt comfortable. She had a way of making people forget she was one of the richest persons in New York. During dinner, Victoria shared something surprising. "Do you know what's happened at Global Tech since we started this program?" she asked the group. "Our employee volunteer hours have increased by 300%. People want to be part of something good. They want to help others. All because one young man showed us what integrity looks like." Marcus blushed at her words. He still wasn't completely comfortable with praise, but he had learned to accept it gracefully. His mother, sitting beside him in a beautiful dress, no longer her special occasion church dress, one of many nice outfits she could now afford, squeezed his hand proudly. As Marcus looked around the room at all the faces, the scholarship recipients, their families, his mother, Victoria Chen, and the program staff, he realized something important. His decision to return the ring hadn't just changed his life. It had created a ripple effect of goodness that kept spreading. The ring that had once seemed like it could solve all his family's problems had actually done something much more valuable. It had shown that one person's honesty could inspire thousands of others to be their best selves. Before leaving the dinner, Victoria pulled Marcus aside. "Your father would be so proud," she said softly, touching the watch on his wrist. "You've proven that true wealth isn't about what's in your bank account. It's about what's in your heart." Marcus nodded, thinking about the frightened 12-year-old boy who had walked into a police station 3 years ago. That boy could never have imagined how much good would come from simply doing the right thing. As he left the restaurant that night, walking home with his mother under the New York City stars, Marcus knew that the real treasure had never been the diamond ring. It was the chance to show others that in a world where people often chose the easy path, choosing the right path could change everything.